My name is Anna Perach. I'm here in my show Host in Gasworks. The exhibition looks at narratives to do with the history of femininity and kind of narratives to do with the experience of women throughout history and mythology. We had lots of kind of conversations about how to call the show, and we ended up with Host because the idea is there is a lot of liminal spaces within the show, so spaces that exist in between. The work Woman from Outside is kind of the starting point for the kind of the loose narrative of the show, which is based on this night visions and descriptions of the witches' Sabbath. The women describe how at night they were sleeping, and then this group of women led by this goddess, has many different names, comes and they take the woman with her to go to the Sabbath, which is a ritual where they celebrate the devil. Most of the witch trials were done like not in the Middle Ages, but actually in the Renaissance and in kind of the style of modernity. And that was because we had that sort of transition from healing systems and herbal healing systems, which were mostly dominated by women, to a structure that was more led by men, kind of as part of the trying to understand the body, and within that the female body, the anatomical Venuses were built. And that was built initially because there was a shortage of cadavers, and also kind of to avoid some moral issues. I recreated a version of my own anatomical Venus, but it's a wearable sculpture. So when you enter the exhibition, it is sort of left as a skin, as something that was once inhabited and now is empty. But the idea is that you can inhabit it and you can also get out of it. And the interesting thing is that initially they were just there to understand the female anatomy. But as time went by, there were a lot of additions made to that had nothing to do with the research of the body. Basically, they became this kind of Western idea of female beauty. It's interesting because the female body is considered to be quite abject and bloody, and all those elements were sort of taken out. So the actual end doll became almost like a sex doll. So it became sterile of all those uncomfortable sort of ins and outs, and in that sense almost like a fetishistic object. I quite like the idea that the work has two states, that it can be shown as an installation, a sculptural work, but also has the potential to be activated and alive. Within the performance, we have three characters which are sort of like witches coming out of the big frame from behind it, and then they're creating this operation on the anatomical Venus, and it ends with them sort of birthing or releasing the new character. Then the second part is my version of the witches' Sabbath, which is very much a rave and a party. So the idea is that they all become as this one organism during the performance, and ideally the audience should experience that as well. I think that's what often happens in like really good parties, is where you sort of for a second lose a sense of your boundaries. So for this work, I worked with Luigi Ambrosio, who kind of choreographs all my works, very much was able to transform some of the ideas into literally the movements and the expression of it through the body. And then I work with Laima Layton, who's also is a Gasworks studio artist, and she created this amazing soundscape that initially we recorded some of the elements within the studio, so literally the materials, so yarn, glass, tufting, to keep it sort of organic to the work. The sound you hear in the performance is the same sound you hear during the installation. So the first 20 minutes are activated in room 1, and then it moves to the speakers in room 2. So if you stay long enough, you can potentially go between the two spaces and have your own little ritual. The way you tuft is, I have a kind of a fabric made for tufting that's stretched on the frame, and you will see that fabric within the shell, the gray fabric within the doors and the large frame. And then I use a gun, and the gun kind of goes through the fabric, and it sort of penetrates the fabric. So there is this idea of movement in and out, I suppose, and that's sort of a movement that repeats throughout the whole shows. I think sometimes people find my work a bit uncomfortable. I think that discomfort comes from this blurriness of inside and outside. So I think a lot of the work kind of has the potential to draw you in, expel you, invites you to that experience. And as an audience, you identify with that experience. Hence, you sort of slightly lose the clear boundaries of yourself. And that is a very uncomfortable experience. But that's an experience I'm deeply curious about.